Thanks for checking out this video. I figured some people may be interested in knowing all the horror movies I watched in October, and if you want to, feel free on this video to comment and tell me everything that you ended up watching in October. I was planning on taking it a little more easy this October, and I know I have done videos like this past maybe 2 years, letting people know what I watched. I thought I was going to take it more easy, but I did like 60 some last year, and this year I ended up doing 73. So it's kind of like, how did I end up doing more? And actually, I know the answer to that. Uncle Pete and I have been getting ready for our 90s horror superlatives series to be kicking off in November. And for that reason, I was trying to watch as many 90s horror films as I can, so that'll reflect in my list. I'm not going to talk much about the films unless something really stands out to me about the film, or I think it's like an underrated gem or something like that. I'll make a comment, but for the most part, I'm just going to read through because it's 73 films, so hopefully people enjoy this enough. So the first bunch were actually from the watch party that I did, which was a lot of fun on October 1st. Great way to start off the month, and I think that's something I'll probably continue to do in the future. Not necessarily on the first of the month, but like the first Saturday of the month. In October, that is. So I watched Extraordinary, which is a great comedy horror if you haven't seen it on Shudder. The Red Queen Kills Seven Times, a giallo film. Tragedy Girls, Intruder, which is like cheese. The Devil's Rain, The Devil's Rain. Mosquito, which is a great kind of so bad it's good. Dark Glasses, which was the Argento film. Nightbreed, but the version with Joe Bob Briggs, the one he did on the last drive-in, so that was even more fun. Hocus Pocus, the original, because Hocus Pocus 2 was coming out, and my wife was like, we gotta watch Hocus Pocus first, which, it's a classic. The Food of the Gods, which I did a review for on the channel. The Borrower, which is a weird film from the 90s. Very weird. If you've seen it, you know why it's weird, but yeah, look into it. It's worth experiencing. Subspecies, which I don't really like that much. Not a big fan of Subspecies, is on Shudder. Hocus Pocus 2, which a lot of people hated it. I didn't think it was terrible. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. And to me, I kind of feel like if you just took the Sanderson sisters out of it, it would have been a better film. I know that's messed up to say because it's literally like about them, but it just seemed like they didn't have it in them, and the story didn't have enough to tie to them really in a fun way. But that was just my fault. The Pit and the Pendulum, the one from the 90s, which is kind of an underrated film. It's on Shudder, I think, still. Eli, which was one I did a review for off Netflix. Split Second, people have been telling me about that. Had Rutger Hauer in it. It's like a sci-fi horror type dealy. Kind of fun. Body Melt, which is a pretty nuts film from the 90s, if you've ever seen it. The Carrier, which is another very nuts film. A wonderful So Bad It's Good that I did a review on my channel. The Cabin in the Woods, one of my favorites. Love The Cabin in the Woods. Body Snatchers, the one from the 90s, which is... there have been so many iterations of like Body Snatchers and Body Snatcher-esque films, and this is definitely... I was going to say definitely the worst. I hesitated because I saw another bad one recently, but no, I think it's definitely the worst that I've seen. Green Room, which is a wonderful A24 horror film, very underrated. Splinter, great, another underrated horror film that I did a review on recently. The New Hellraiser, which I also put out a review for. Ticks from the 90s, if you know and love Ticks, yeah, that's a fun one. Lake Mungo, which I also just did a review for recently. That was a fun found footage film, which I usually don't like found footage, but that was fun for me. Someone's Watching Me. That was a very early John Carpenter film. If you haven't seen it, pretty decent. If you're kind of like a John Carpenter completist, you should definitely see that one. Brain Scan. That's a movie. I did not like it. Funny Man, which is a very odd film. It's terrible in the start, but it actually gets pretty fun, from the 90s. I'd never even heard of it. I just kind of like stumbled upon it and was like, actually, this is kind of fun. It's very comedy driven. It's British, so the humor's a little bit dry. The Last Shark, which was hard to sit through, but I did a review for it on the channel. Witchboard 2, The Devil's Doorway. Not horrible, but in comparison to the first Witchboard, which I love, not even close to being as good. Scanner Cop. That was an interesting one. Actually better of a film than I thought it would be. So I recommend Scanner Cop. VHS 99, which obviously I watched that to do a review for Shudder. The Night Flyer, which is one that had been on my list to see based off a Stephen King film. I enjoyed that one enough. Then we get to Evil Ed. That's a nutty film from the 90s. The Prophecy with Christopher Walken, also from the 90s. The Thing, and here's the thing. I was very lucky. I have a drive-in theater not far from me, so I actually saw 5 horror films in October at my local drive-in called Benji's Drive-In. So awesome. So I saw The Thing at Benji's Drive-In, and then the original Halloween 78 at Benji's Drive-In. That was an awesome night. I'll tell you about the other 3 that I did later, because I'm actually going in chronological order that I actually watched the films. So it's just easier for me to go off the list. So I'll tell you when the drive-in ones come up again. Then I did for a watch party Dark Night of the Scarecrow, which was a pretty fun, kind of surprising that it was a made-for-TV movie. It was pretty dark and disturbing for that. Then I watched Habit, the Joe Bob Briggs version that was on the last drive-in. That was fun. Watched The Black Phone. Not going to say anything about my feelings on that because at this point I haven't put my review out for it yet. It is coming. Jacko with Linnea Quigley from the 90s. That was fun. The Howling 7, New Moon Rising. Yuck. Did not like. A film called Dead Space from the 90s, which was pretty interesting, actually. I kind of enjoyed that one. Kind of slow, though. John Carpenter's Vampires, which I hadn't actually seen before. And I was like, it's a 90s film. I gotta check it out for my 90s superlative stuff. But, yeah, it's not a good film, but it has fun aspects. Resurrection, another Shudder screener, which was a good film. I have a review out for that already. Leatherface, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, also from the 90s. Not great. Not terrible, not great. Freaked, which is a kind of hidden gem that I know people talk about here and there. Talk about Freaked. I was originally introduced to it in college, but it had been a while, so I watched it. Possession. Very underrated 1981 film. Actually, super good. I released a very exhaustive review of it. I'm very proud of that review. It did take a lot out of me to do it, but check that out if you're interested. Then my next night, when my wife and I went to the drive-in, we saw The Evil Dead, yes, the original, Terrifier 2, and The Shining. So great, so great. Then I watched Trick or Treats, not Trick or Treat or Trick or Treat, Trick or Treats, which is on Shudder, and I don't really recommend that. Not a fun film. Hubie Halloween. Listen, I actually like Hubie Halloween. I don't love it, but there's enough funny stuff in it, and what I love most about it is it captures Salem really well. And I've actually been to Salem some years ago. I think it's been like 5 years ago now that I was in Salem for Halloween, and it was such a magical moment. So I think that film kind of taps into that for me a bit, and that's one of the reasons I really like it. Plus, like I said, there are enough funny moments that I enjoy it enough. So I watched Hubie Halloween. Wishmaster. I'm a fan. Very underrated. Like that one. Mandrake. That was another Shudder review one that's coming up for November, actually. So the review's not out yet. Grimcutty, which is a 2022 film. Already shot the review for that. It's not out yet, so I'm not going to say anything. Slashback, another Shudder screener, so I'm not going to say anything about that because it's not out yet. Kronos, old school Guillermo del Toro film that I saw a long time ago and didn't really like, so I needed to watch it again, especially because it's a 90s film, and I liked it more this time, I will say. Dracula Dead and Loving It, I had never seen that, and Leslie Nielsen is really funny, so I enjoyed it because Leslie Nielsen. Barbarian, not going to say anything about it yet because the review hasn't come out yet, but I have a review coming. Satan Slaves Communion, and at this point, it is out, so my review on that is out. So check out my review on Satan Slaves Communion. Definitely check out that review. Yes, check that out. The Dark Half, which was an interesting 90s horror film. I think it was by George A. Romero, actually, which I hadn't known about this film until I was looking into 90s films. Actually, not too bad. The Faculty, which it's been a long time since I saw it, so I wanted to revisit that one, the Robert Rodriguez film. Disturbing Behavior, which I had never seen before, but a 90s film, and it was on HBO Max. Mimic, which was also on HBO Max, and I had seen before and enjoyed. I was just rewatching it for a refresher for our 90s superlatives. The original Leprechaun, because it was from the 90s, which I had seen it before, but, I just wanted to rewatch. The Corruption of Chris Miller, which is a Giallo-esque film that we did for one of our watch parties, which is always fun. Leprechaun 2, which kind of a chore to get through. Yeah, wasn't a fan. Scary Movie. I love horror comedies, and Scary Movie is a wonderful one. And I love how literally it is a parody mostly of Scream, and Scream is a parody of slasher films. So it's like a parody of a parody. It's funny. I always love it. Phantasm 3, Lord of the Dead, with the Joe Bob Briggs treatment on The Last Drive-In. And Phantasm 4, Oblivion, with Joe Bob Briggs, The Last Drive-In, because why not? Plus, I needed to rewatch those two Phantasm films because the 90s. Then We Are Still Here, which is one that I will have a review coming out for this coming weekend. It was the last subscriber requested review for October, so it's just kind of, leaking over into November a little bit. And then the last film on Halloween night after giving out candy to trick-or-treaters, Trick or Treat. I love that film. It has been tradition for my wife and I to watch that after giving out candy on Halloween night for, I don't know, like 6 years now, maybe even longer. I don't know. But it's always so great. Like, it is, for me, like the perfect Halloween night feel. It's a great thing to watch before going to bed, but it also makes me even more sad when I wake up the next day and I'm like, it's November. But anyway, like I said, if you want to give me a list of what you watched, go ahead and put it in the comments. I am always interested in what other people are watching for sure. Or if you just want to give me recommendations based off what you watched in October and just be like, I watched a bunch, but these are the ones I think are really good, or these are the ones that I think are like so bad it's good, because I'm definitely into that. But thank you very much for watching this video. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell if you haven't already. I greatly appreciate those things. But yeah, until next time, keep it brutal.